Welcome back. So we are going to go ahead and get in sort of a beginner's look into the sports card. So as a beginner, if you wanted to get into this from sort of an investor's standpoint, what would that process look like? And I know this is like a sort of a refresher course for me. I might even add some details. I sort of got in the sports card market a few months ago with the help from Harrison. So it'll definitely help me out as well. So Harrison, why don't you go ahead and kick us off? So, if you're a beginner, you're just starting out, you want to start making money, start getting into sports cards. What's the first step? What do you do?
Okay, step one, you're a beginner, you want to get into cards. Do not go and buy a box and or packs and open up cards. As crazy as
Lighting your money on fire.
yeah, as crazy as that sounds, like that should be like, oh, like you want to get into cards, like yeah, go buy a box of cards and open cards, like then you'll have cards. Then like you don't want to do that in today's market. That's probably like one of like my bigger tips I can give out as like if you're a beginner, like mistakes to avoid, and that would be buying boxes and packs in this market right now. So, for example, I'll just explain the magnitude of this. So, I'm holding right here. This was a box of 2018-19 Prism basketball hobby box. So there's like a little distinction. Whenever you say hobby, this is a hobby box, meaning, well, A, it's pretty expensive. B, they usually guarantee hits in them, which hit is just kind of a term for a generic term for an autograph or a jersey card. And generally have more cards in general. And we'll also have like more numbered cards in there too. So this box guarantees 2 autographs, but like I said, Prism, you don't really look for the autographs. But okay, so anyway, back in 2018 when this box released, like brand new on the shelf, I went to my local card shop. So there's, in terms of like places to buy, like sealed packs and boxes. You can buy them obviously, well, online. You can find just about anything anywhere. But also at Target and Walmart, they'll have retail, which I will show. So retail. Um, these are actually the same product. This is just the one that would get released in Targets and Walmarts. Generally, less cards, a lot less, chance of um, pulling something good. Obviously, like very low chance of numbered and autos. Just it's just like a watered down, cheaper version of a hobby box. So anyway, back to this hobby box. Um, at my local card shop, this box in 2018 retailed at an MSRP of around $230, which probably seems pretty expensive to a lot of people.
Especially if you're just getting in.
Yeah, but to put that into perspective, in today's market, had I left this box sealed, um, not just left the shrink wrap on it, left all the packs unopened inside, this box sealed is worth around $4,500 in today's market. This guy, back in the day, you could go get these at Targets and Walmarts. There'd be a gajillion of them on the shelves. You can buy 2, 3, 10. Who cares? At $20 a piece for one of these guys. In today's market, these run around like 800 a piece. So obviously, that is a those are a little bit drastic because obviously that rookie class is insane. But the point I'm trying to make is that the prices on sealed boxes and packs have just skyrocketed, and there is, if you are looking to get into cards to make money, you should never do you should never go and buy a sealed box or pack hoping to make a profit from it. You will most certainly lose probably 90 plus% of the time in today's market and the prices that everything costs, which is unfortunate because that's how I got into cards, was like opening packs and boxes. And when they were affordable, it was great because, you'd open cards. It wasn't so much money. So you wouldn't, get, you wouldn't get hurt too bad if, you didn't get anything good. And, you could afford to open enough stuff to where you would open enough stuff and you would actually hit something pretty big and make a bunch of money. But in today's market, that it's just very high end gambling, and a lot of the products, it's either you're either going to hit a Zion or you're going to lose all your money, basically. So that kind
Yeah,
of
so
thing.
it definitely sounds like the like opening boxes, because I mean, theoretically you can still do that, but it's just a lot higher of a like risk reward type of ratio. Like you're not going to be getting a whole lot back most likely, but like you do have, it's kind of like gambling. Like you do have a chance to strike gold, but you're not necessarily going
Yeah,
to like
yeah.
the
It's
chances are
just a
just so slim.
gamble.
Yeah,
Um, it's a gamble and a very gambling with pretty poor odds, in my opinion. But
sure.
I still like to open boxes and packs every once in a while. Just for fun. But if you're
Yeah.
looking to get into it, do not stay away from boxes and packs. But one,
So I assume you're gonna recommend to just like look for individual cards.
yeah. So basically, what I do nowadays, and what people who want to get into cards do, is buying singles, which that's just what it's called for when you look to just buy like a card as a card. It's called buying singles. So if you're like just getting into it and you want to start, um, I would set aside. I I don't think I could really recommend an amount because that's just really dependent on what kind of scale you want to do it in. Obviously, if you want to do things on a bigger scale and have more expensive cards, you'll want to have more money to invest. Which you put more money forward, you'll be able to afford higher end cards that will um, get you more money. Or if you just want to start small, say I don't know, you just take $100 and you go out and buy. If I was getting in for like $100, let's say you just want to start really small like that, I would go out and probably buy. Um, I would use that probably buy 4 or 5 cards worth like $20 or $25, and then kind of hold those until they appreciate a little bit. Usually, there's no really good ROI like number that I look for usually, but usually I am happy to make a sale if it's about 1 1/3 times to 1.5 times is kind of like my minimum I would look at when selling something. Um, but so just getting in, I wouldn't put like all your money into one card. Um, I would spread it out a little bit and maybe go into a few different players. And just starting out, I would personally kind of stay away from trying to like chase like a penny stock type player. So like like a really under radar guy that is really either going to be a boom or a bust. I would put that money into um, decent like lower tier cards, established players, is what I would say.
So not like trying to get big on a bull, hoping that he can be
Yeah,
the
I
next big
wouldn't do
player.
that with. I personally would not try to chase a lower drafted rookie on a crowded team. No, I wouldn't do that. I would say, um,
So what
I,
are some of the things you look for? Sorry to cut you off there, but
yeah,
like
no problem.
so say you are, you have your budget set, you're trying to get into it. What do you actually look for in the players or the cards themselves to say, okay, that's a good one for
That'd be a
like,
good buy.
yeah.
Um, so typically, to keep it like basketball focused. People, the hobby, the market really favors scores. So, um, well, a pretty key rule I think is that basketball good does not equate to like card good. So a good example of that I would say would be um, Carl Anthony Towns is one that typically comes to mind for me. Um, he is without a doubt, like I would say, a top five center in the game. Not many people can do what he can do at his height. He's number one overall pick. He's just like a pretty like top tier player, like all star caliber. But his his cards are dirt cheap in comparison to some of these other top tier players, and that's for a variety of reasons. But I think the main one would be the fact that he's not like a perennial scorer, um, and then a step down from being a scorer. I'd say team is a really big one. I mean, he's on the Timberwolves, which are kind of the lower tier
The
of
last team in the West right now.
yeah, they're definitely the lower tier, on the lower tier of teams in terms of collectability. So typically the guys in really big marketplaces do especially well. So your LA's, your um, Golden State, believe it or not, like the and the Knicks. I mean, I know they're not typically the greatest team every year, but RJ Barrett, I mean, his his cards go for a substantial amount of money. They just have a pretty large following, big fan base. Luca in Dallas is another big one. So I would look for you want to find a guy who can go out there and like have a game, put up crazy amounts of points, or at least has the ability to. Um, and then has I would look for someone whose team has upside or is in a pretty big market area.
And I know another thing like I want to know is, and I think this is also kind of a challenge when evaluating types of players to purchase, just from my personal perspective and experience through getting into sports cards. But it's I find that it's the biggest challenge is sort of evaluating the cloutness of a player. And I know that's not like the best term for it, but like for example, like Lonzo Ball is not the best scorer in the game by far. He's not like the most offensively gifted, but his card goes for so much money. And why is that? Because he's got this sort of clout behind him. He's got this energy. And there's a lot of players like that. And I think that's also another way to look at it is though in addition to those scorers, but there's also these sort of clout players that if you can sort of evaluate what that price point is for you as an investor and sort of pick in on that. I think that's really easy, but I also do think it is a little difficult because I find those cloudy players typically come into the league that way. And it's sort of, you have to hope if you're going to buy it, you're going to be buying in high there, but you have to hope their game sort of elevates that price up. I find it kind of, and I think you could speak on this, Harrison, but I find it kind of unlikely that someone's going to sort of get that clout in 3-4 years in their career. I feel like they sort of come in if they're a high draft pick or have a lot of noise in college. Like for example, like Grayson Allen and all this tripping incidents, like he has all this energy and a lot of people don't like him, but a lot of times that makes his card more valuable. And so I kind of find that that's another way to sort of evaluate players and cards to pick
for
up.
sure.
I mean, it definitely makes sense because I mean, I'm sure also sometimes the college that they go to can play some type of role, especially early on, because you can look at it not only as a hype, but just like they almost have like a little cult like following. Just people that have been watching them for a long time, people that believe in them, want them
Blue
to
blood colleges,
so they have that bigger market. There's more people that are willing to pay that high dollar to get one of those top tier cards.
Yeah, I will. So there are, particular players, especially guys coming out of college from your Dukes, Carolinas, Kentuckies, Kansas. Like those dudes, typically their cards might be, like little higher than, like similar counterparts from like a lesser school, because you
Yeah.
kind of have two different fan bases, or like, collecting populations that would potentially want that card. I did want to comment. I feel like the culmination of all of those things is actually Tyler Hero. um,
Yeah.
he's coming from Kentucky, which is one of the top followed college basketball programs, and then he just has a lot of clout. I mean,
He's got the moxie.
he's
Yeah.
got a song named after him. He's just got drip. He snarled in the NBA Finals. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, another question I guess I would have is sort of for a beginner investor, especially when picking out cards. So, um, I know, especially when I started out, I was like, I just have no clue, like, just where to even look. Like, what kinds of things would I even look up? And I know, like, eBay is a really good market to pick up a lot of these singles as you're advising and purchasing individual cards if you're just starting out. What would you look up on eBay? Like, what kind of things are you going to look up? Like Panini Prisms? Do you think there's other of those sets of Panini that you maybe recommend that might be a little bit better price point? Are there certain seasons that you might think, hey, these are better seasons? Maybe look for players. What kind of things do you use on eBay to sort of filter out and search for these cards?
Okay. Yeah. So if you're just getting in, you want to get into some players. I would typically, if you're looking to invest, I would stick to probably three main Panini sets. One would obviously be Prism. That's kind of the king. Um, Two would be Optic slash, also called Donruss Optic, another popular one. And three would probably be Panini Mosaic, which is actually it was a brand new product just this past season, but it has been a pretty big hit on the secondary market. I would, if you're looking to buy, I would look for any of those three. In terms of what else to search when buying, if you're looking to just get in, invest, and be able to flip, I would personally go buy graded cards. For a couple of reasons. The main one being flipping. You, you're really treating it like a stock almost, and the problem with cards is that, so let's say you want to buy a raw Luka Doncic Prism rookie card and try to flip. Um, that, I mean, that's cool, but odds are is that you'll get the card in, and there will be some condition defects to it, which that's just the risk you take when buying a raw card. From my experience, it is very difficult to purchase a raw card from somewhere and then it ends up being in good enough condition to where you can send it in and like get a PSA 10. Like that is pretty rare. Typically, if you are um, buying a raw card from somebody, it is likely raw for a reason, and that reason was being it probably isn't in the greatest shape. Actually, a big teller of that. So let's say you're looking on eBay for buy cards, and you want to buy a raw card from someone um, with intention of potentially grading it if it's nice. I would look at at the seller's page and see what other items he has on there, and if he has graded cards on there too, I would not be purchasing that raw card, because that that seller obviously knows what's up with grading and does PSA orders, and that raw card you're looking at is probably a like reject from a potential PSA order, so it's probably not going to grade well. So that's a good tip. But yeah, so I would probably stick to buying PSA 9s or 10s. Um, and then so that way when you get them in, there's no question, no ambiguity in terms of condition, and you will be able to turn right around and sell it without having any of those like unforeseen issues. So I find that pretty good in terms
Yeah.
of.
And I mean that
Yep.
also kind of makes sense because if you're buying the graded cards, then you don't have to then go through the process of
Yeah,
trying to
you don't
get
have to
them
grade them.
graded. You don't have to pay that
Obviously,
additional money, and
yeah.
yeah. So
I mean,
I'll like
obviously, you're going to be paying a premium on
sure,
buying a graded, but like the work's done for you, and you don't have to worry about that kind of thing. So yeah.
yeah, take some of the guesswork out of it for you.
Hmm.
So how long, um, if you could give, and I know like with how volatile the market can be, this might be a hard question to answer, but for like a beginner investors looking to get into this, how long do you typically maybe hold, I guess on average, a card for? I know it's kind of a hard question to say. It's really dependent. But I mean, do you typically try and like flip cards pretty quickly? Are you more of a long-term investor? Do you wait a couple of years? Sort of, how do you play that?
For me personally, I am more of a turn and burn kind of guy. So what I mean by that is like I will buy things with the intent of selling them pretty soon. Um, you know, a lot of what I am into buying nowadays, I like buying things with some rarity to them. Like I don't know, just
A
throw like
number or something like
yeah, like
that?
numbered up. I kind of like buying those kind of things. You can find deals on those, and what I like to do, I like to look for cards like that and say, I know like right now I could buy this right now and turn around literally like when I get it in the mail, like when I actually get the card, I'll be like, I know I can get more money for this than this person's asking, and I'll just turn right around and sell it. For the more like um, speculating, speculating type cards, so those would be like your like PSA 10 base cards, something that is pretty mass produced and is like pretty desirable and popular. Those ones, those ones are the ones you treat more like a stock. If you are like pretty high on that player, they could potentially be long-term holds. If that player, so let's give an example of Bull from last summer in the bubble. Bull has one like pretty insane preseason game, and his price is probably quadruple within a couple hours because the market is ridiculous. Um, if that's the case, I mean, there's really obvious times where you're going to want to be selling things. Like if some guy, a lower tier guy, just pops off, has an outrageous game, everybody goes crazy, you're going to want to sell that. No
Like
questions
Talon
asked.
Horton Tucker
Like
right now
Taylor
as
Horton
well.
Tucker, like any of those kind of guys who are, like lower tier players who just all of a sudden like break out for a couple games and go crazy.
A
Those,
Jeremy Lin.
those are the easiest sells in my opinion. Um, when you get into like your bigger name players, the Lucas, the Giannis's, the LeBron. I mean, a lot of those guys will, in my opinion, are kind of the blue chips of the league, and I have no problem holding them. But the more like really hyped up rookies and like lesser established players, whenever they kind of like break out or have like a monster string of games or something, that's typically a pretty good time to sell.
Okay. Davis, do you have any more questions? I know I have one more, but I want to ask it at the end. So,
No, you can go ahead.
all right. So, yeah, the last question I have for you, Harrison, is so for the market in sports cards, what do you kind of see the future of it being 5, 10 years down the line with it being so like big and hot right now, and there's so many people involved on it. Everyone's just buying and selling it. It's very active. Do you see that trend sort of continuing in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I really do. I think they are here to stay. Um, I really think that they are kind of a staple now because there have been like some really big personalities that have gotten into sports cards. Like I know a really big one is Gary V. Gary Vaynerchuk.
Mm-hmm.
He, I feel like if you have like really big celebrity presence in the game and like they're making money from it and enjoying it, I feel like the general public will kind of be more receptive into joining the hobby and keeping it going. If we continue to get kids into it, like they'll grow up and have more money to, like they can say, oh, remember that card I couldn't afford when I was 8 years old? Well, now I have money and I'm going to go buy it and buy all these other cards, that kind of thing. So I think the card market will be very strong for years to come. I guess one of like the only concerns I have would be so the like PSA 10 base cards, that kind of stuff. If there was like one thing in the market that like there was one bubble that could pop, I would say it'd be those, just because they are at the end of the day still mass produced.
Mm-hmm.
And my advice for that would be use these to make money so that you can buy stuff with rarity, because at the end of the day, with rarity is
Those
what
cards hold value for longer.
will
I
hold
feel like.
value, because
Yeah.
there's a finite number of them, and
It's like they have an inherent value about them, and it's like over time, whether that player if he struggles or sort of
yeah.
in general that base card decreases in value, I feel like it's not going to affect that numbered more rare card as much because it already has this inherent value about it.
So yeah, my advice, so use like common base cards to get money, so then you can like put into like the really like high end like big baller cards. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
that's kind
and
of my
I
outlook.
also, and just to like add on to that too, I also think that with Spencer Dinwiddie, I think it was last season trying to sort of start where like he was trying to get people to sort of invest in him and sort of treat himself as like a
Yeah,
company and people could buy stock of him. I think, and that sort of didn't go that well. There were some people that invested, but it wasn't enough to make sort of an impact. I feel like the sports card market is sort of a way for people to do that. They can sort of buy these cards, which are like stocks of players. And I think with sports just continuing to grow in general, like the NBA as a whole, in terms of its global market, it's just going to continue to grow. I do think that this is a way that people can sort of interact with the NBA and feel involved and sort of be an investor in that sense. And so I do agree. I do think the sports market is here to stay. It's going to continue to grow and develop. And I know I'm personally interested to see with this new rookie class, sort of how big the market is, how are the prices sort of going to affect these entry level cards? How high are they going to be? I know from an investor standpoint, that's going to be interesting to see how that sort
yeah,
of all
for
plays
sure.
out.
Hmm.
So
Do you see like online sports betting in any type of way, negatively impacting the market for some of these things? Or do you think because it's a physical tactile object, this, will be sticking around? I just feel like to some extent, some of the people that could potentially get into sports card buying and selling might be, a couple of years down the road just get into like daily sports betting and some of those types of things instead. I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Um, you know, that is interesting. I particularly think cards will kind of prevail over. I'm not to say that daily sports betting and all that kind of stuff is gonna like they're people will obviously still be doing that, and that that's cool. I think cards as what they have versus what betting does not is that they are an alternative asset. Um, I I just think like you guys said that it being an alternative asset, it's like tangible object, something that you can actually have, and that you know, something gambling, you know, I mean, there's a chance you get absolutely zero return on investment. I feel like cards are just an alternative asset, something that you can have money in, has liquidity, and you know, it's just kind of holding money somewhere different. You know, um, that's just my thoughts on it personally. I'm not, you know, super knowledgeable on sports betting or anything like that, but I just like the fact that cards are tangible and you know, actually have value to them. Um, if you are buying singles, I mean, uh, as long as you're not doing anything crazy, you shouldn't be drastically losing a bunch of money or anything. So
Yeah, for sure. Are there any last minute kind of like resources or YouTube pages or websites that you would recommend to people that are interested in this could go to kind of get some more information outside of this podcast?
yeah, for sure. So some places I really like. I think some of the best places to get like input on the market, the hobby, the industry are from actual like brick and mortar card shops. Um, I'll plug a few. You can find them on Instagram, YouTube. Art Card Collector Two in Columbus, Ohio. That should be his handle. He's a great one. If you go watch his YouTube videos, he does like mail days, so you can see like what he's buying and you know like you know what he thinks is good, and then he also just does like grading orders, like uh, you know like prepping cards to be sent out for grading, like return. Like he does everything. Similarly, not on YouTube, but RBI Crew 7 is another card shop that is actually located in St. Peters, Missouri. So I'm actually able to travel there and like visit them. They are like without a doubt one of the top card shops in the nation. They are great. Um, you can find them on Instagram too. And a few places I'd like to plug that I do grading with are Nash cards and Clay cards. You can find them on Instagram. Super cool. They're very knowledgeable on the whole grading aspect of the industry. So if you're looking to get into that, and one last, don't if you're looking to get into it, I would stay away from. I'm not gonna like plug any particular ones, but uh, I would stay away from any media that has like investing advice and like something you'd have to pay a subscription for or like pay to have this one like market tracking tool. Don't I would stay far away from anything like that. You just don't need it, and those kinds of groups are actually kind of culprits of market manipulation, which I won't really get into that much, but basically they are selling you investment advice to go buy certain players who they secretly have hordes of and are just basically pumping up their own inventory to get more money for it. So
Right.
just stay away from those kinds of pages or sites.
Yeah, it's interesting that those are actually existing. I didn't know
Yeah,
about that. I'm not really into the sports card betting or sports card market like you guys are. But I'm definitely more into the stock market. And I know there's a lot of like laws and regulations with regards to like if you're,
yeah,
going to be promoting or upgrading or downgrading the value of a, potential price projection, you can't necessarily have like any equity in those stocks for those rules. So it's interesting that the card market doesn't necessarily have that same level of like scrutiny and like regulation because it's just you know different third parties working individually to try to come up with prices and stuff like that. So
yeah.
I
I
think
mean,
you gave some very stout
that's
advice.
back to the thing about these being like a physical asset is that you know it if you open packs it can't be called gambling because you know getting stuff.
Something.
And
Yeah.
like at the end of the day, like I said, nobody says these should be worth what they are. The market determines the price on them. So that like there cannot be any legislation or anything like that that can control cards. There's just no way.
All right. So without further ado, I'm just going to give a brief summary of our 10 general tips for beginners and an intro card market, potential like investors before we go into our last break. So these are all from Harrison. So tip number 1, don't buy an open boxes hoping to strike gold. That's just gambling. Tip number 2, set a budget for yourself and split your budget into a diversified set safe of single cards. Tip number 3, the market favors scores and bigger market teams. So look for players that fit those criteria when you're first getting started and selecting your players. Tip number 4, be aware of the hype or clout that surrounds some players, as well as the colleges that they went into, because some of those nuanced factors can help determine the price and demand of the cards as well. Tip number 5, only look to buy graded cards. Tip number 6, this deviates from tip number 5, but if you're looking at raw cards to potentially buy, look at that seller's page to see if they, might have some other listed graded cards. That could be a big red flag that, that card doesn't have as much intrinsic value. Tip number 7, younger players are more volatile in the market than established players like LeBron James, who could be kind of seen as a blue chip stock equivalent in this market. Tip number 8, cards with distinct features like the patch, the serial numbers, and the autographs have more intrinsic value. So that should be your goal to try to eventually, use the lower value cards to kind of work your way up to those. Tip number 9, a couple plugs on some different sources to get some more information would be Card Collector 2 from YouTube, RBI Cruise 7 from St. Peter's. That's just a shop. On Instagram, though, they do have an Instagram page, and then
Definitely
Nash
all cards.
and Clay Cards on Instagram as well. And then the final tip is stay away from media that's trying to sell you some type of service regarding this whole thing, because those are normally just types of scams. So I think that's a great set of advice, Harrison. So I thank you for that. And with that, we're going to head into our final break.